So in the original 5 seasons of Red vs. Blue, the Bloodgulch chronicles, most of the plot from Season 3 to Season 5 involved time travel. Now when Season 6 through 8 came out, the Recollection trilogy, the time travel was retconned to partially be a simulation, but they never really went into detail on how it happened and how much of it was fake. Obviously, some things in it were fake, like they didn't actually go 1,000 years into the past and 500 years into the future, but that didn't mean that the loop didn't have to happen, because Wyoming looped, why couldn't Church? It's been debated amongst fans for years on the extent of the simulation and how much of it was real and how much of it wasn't. And I personally believe that even up to Season 13, that answer has been left ambiguous on purpose, for the same reason why we've never seen the Reds and Blues faces, because, we could be disappointed at whatever we see if it's not what we originally imagined. My channel goes over what I think happened with the time travel ad nauseum, although I find it fairly entertaining. But then Season 15 came out. In the episode where Dylan and Jax are on Sidewinder looking into Project Freelancer's files and looking through some of the information that Vic was giving Dylan, Dylan mentions that the Reds and Blues dealt with time travel. And I thought to myself, is this them hinting that time travel's going to come back and be answered in Red vs. Blue? And someone in the comments section was like, nah, man, I think time travel's fairly done in this show. I don't think they're going to visit it again. And lo and behold, the finale of Season 15 brought back time travel. And then the majority of the plot of 16 and 17 involved it. And if you've been following my channel since the beginning, you'll know that my feelings on how they handled the time travel in that last trilogy was not what I thought it should have been. The main reason would be because when you're bringing time travel into Red vs. Blue, it's obviously because they already dealt with it. So unless you're going to touch upon what happened in the other seasons and actually give us an answer in depth of what happened, why bring it in? What they decided to say was that time travel was completely fake, but this one's real. And what are the odds the Reds and Blues would deal with that? And after having obsessed over the entire show and examining the time travel and everything throughout Season 1 through Season 13 and 14, I think I have the perfect way they could have brought time travel back to Red vs. Blue and made it fully relevant and tied the entire series together. The first thing I want to talk about is the rules of time travel in Seasons 3 through 5 versus the rules in 15 through 17. So in 3 through 5, if someone goes back in time and changes something, then they can't actually change it. Like, every time someone does something, it ends up happening anyway, but for a different reason. And then there's a handful of moments where they do change things majorly, but then the next iteration comes around because of the time looping, and they end up causing it to not happen, so therefore inevitably, it happens again the same way it's supposed to, it just took a little longer. And if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, every time there's a time loop clone that's created, they eventually die. All the Wyoming time clones got killed by the Reds and Blues, and you see all the Church clones, you don't see them die, you also see them theoretically turn into the text drones, which are then deleted. So eventually any time clone is dispatched. Now when it comes to 15 through 17, there are a lot of moments where they go back in time to change things, and inevitably things can't change. It happens anyway, just a different way. Then later on we see things actually start to change and stay changed, like bringing Washington, Alexander the Great, and John Wayne to another time period, or bringing other actors in to be in Jax's stupid movie. We also see pizza be deleted from history, as well as Wash getting shot, which once they undo Wash getting shot because of time travel, the universe kind of crumbles, and then somehow they get trapped in the Everwin. Which, by the way, they should have used this map in Season 15 instead of the Forge map. I think these two types of time travel could be the same if you look at it and think about it. If you think about what they try to change that isn't able to change, usually it has to do with themselves, or it's something they do in that time period that ends up happening anyway. Like, for example, when Sarge goes back in time to stop his team from being killed in the war, but they end up dying anyway. Or like when Caboose keeps going back through time and causing multiple fires and multiple events in history. It's possible those things were going to happen anyway, but because Caboose showed up and changed something, he ended up causing it to happen differently, because time's fixing itself. However, it's possible that if it's a big enough change, like for example when Church kills all the Reds and Blues during the time loop because he was tired of everything going wrong, it eventually gets fixed by one of the other time loop clones because he, stops that Church from killing everybody because clearly they're not dead. In this version of it, massive changes such as bringing characters from another time period, like Washington or Alexander the Great, that's a massive change, and it could take time to be fixed, which I guess inevitably it is fixed when the Everwin is created and Wash is stopped from being shot. But then when they stop Wash from getting shot, that does inevitably end up having to happen again, which is the closing arc of Season 17, Wash accepting his fate. So in a way, if you look at both types of time travel, they could be the same. Small changes end up happening anyway because time's trying to fix itself, but massive changes take longer to be fixed because it's like taking a string and tightening it, and you pluck it and it goes bing, and it reverbs and stops. But then you take a really long string and you pluck it, depending on how hard you pluck it, it swings for a while and then eventually stops. Season 16 would be the massive changes, and Season 17 would be the inevitable fix of those changes. As far as certain mechanics of the time travel in 3 through 5, we know that Wyoming can teleport through time, and Church also does teleport through time, theoretically, and it leaves time clones behind, like all the different Churches and all the different Wyomings. However, when Tucker time jumps, he goes back into his own body, and that's because we find out his sword is connected to Wyoming's time device. Different type of technology that kind of links to the time distortion unit. Then in 15 through 17, we see that portals and teleportation can be achieved through time travel in this, but then in 17, once using the full power directly from Krovos, they can teleport into their other bodies in the past. So it doesn't leave time clones or portals, they just jump into their past body. So those two things are kind of parallel if you think of the fact of the time guns are one technology, and then whatever Krovos did to allow them to time travel is an addition to that technology that allows them to jump into their bodies. See, there is a connection to that. The idea that Season 15 through 17's rules of time travel could be similar to Season 3 through 5's rules does kind of help with the believability of my red versus blue theory. The idea that time's been correcting itself this whole time because the prophecy is repeating until it's finished, much like recursion. Which brings me to another similarity in 15 through 17 to my theories. The Everwin, which in my theories would be considered the time circle. The Everwin was created when time was fractured, and inside of it's the entire red versus blue timeline. The Reds and Blues have to go around fixing all the fractures created by Genkins, ultimately having to fix the final fracture, which created the Everwin in the first place, stopping Wash from being shot. However, in 17, when Genkins is jumping around the Everwind and messing things up, the Reds and Blues can follow because Genkins is traveling through time through the fact that he can jump into other AI slots. But the fact that he could just use a time gun and jump around time where the Reds and Blues can't follow sort of breaks the logic of that season. Especially since in 17 they clarify that Krovos and Genkins have the power to turn the guns off. I think with the time circle theory, if that were part of the story, that would give a reason as to why the Reds and Blues only traveled in that time frame. The idea was that because of what happened with the time machine in Season 3, changes were made that now need to be corrected, and because I theorized that the prophecy was finished in Season 13 on Chorus, the time loop would close because I theorized that the director's research with the time machine was connected to Locus and Felix. Because Locus saved Felix in the war, and Felix's death is the final fix. And here's the frustrating part about all these connections. So the time travel in Season 3 was fake. That much has been made very clear. No real explanation of how, but it was fake. One thing is clear though. Wyoming has the ability to teleport himself into the past. We see him go back minutes, but there was never a specific duration he can travel back. He also wasn't using his AI to do it because it was in the tank. So with his AI, technically, it would be more powerful. Meta shows that the device can slow down time dramatically, and a ship has been shown to take a year to crash because of it. A ship literally crashed 1 year after it blew up. Never was it said that the meta slowing time replaced the ability to jump back in time, which Wyoming can do. The time travel in Season 3 was fake, but all of this can still happen. Without 15 through 17 being part of the canon, time travel was possible. Just the whole thing involving it wasn't. Which is weird. No adjusting what happened to fit what the meta in Wyoming can mechanically do. Just all fake. Even though it can be done by the show's rules, apparently we don't need this glaring question explained. Wyoming traveling minutes back in time is literally time travel. The ship, by logic, time traveled a year forward. And if the Reds and Blues just assumed they were sent 500 years into the future, how's that part of the simulation? Nobody told them. Yellow Church was sent farther back than Wyoming was, back to Sidewinder with the fake clones. If that was a simulation, then why? No one saw it happen. One last thing, Wyoming can loop himself back to life, but for some reason there is no explanation for the Reds and Blue Grunts being able to do this. The Season 3 time travel was retconned so well that the fan guide made during Season 13 dances around stating whether or not it was real or fake, and the fan guide ignores that entire part of the timeline. This would have been the perfect time to explain what happened. Even though the time travel in the Shizno Paradox trilogy could be similar to the time travel in the Bloodgulch chronicles, there are still things that aren't explained that don't really make the most sense. Like, for example, when time collapses after they save Wash, why are they sent into the Everwin? Yes, it could be because Krovos sent them into their past bodies using that whole technology that was in the sword, but why wouldn't their bodies remain in the present time period, and why wouldn't they be Schrodingerin like Wash was? Why wouldn't Wash be put into the Everwin as well? Why is his body there and not theirs? Also, the fact that Wash was Schrodingerin, as they put it in the episode's title, doesn't really make the most sense either, because if you're changing a timeline, you would think that you'd be in one timeline and then the other timeline would be broken off. That's the one time we see that happen, but not in the rest of the seasons. But with Wash in that part of the story, you're seeing him jump back and forth between the two timelines simultaneously. Another thing that breaks the logic of the time travel is that at the end of Season 16, when they go back to Temple's lair, they see that the hallway's filled with soldiers, which it wasn't before. And then you find out that Simmons from the future tells them to use what they've learned, which they probably could have just figured out on their own. And then they end up emptying the hallway for their past selves. Now that differs because it's one thing if they went back in time and caused something that already happened to happen differently. But the first time around, the hallway was empty. It's not like they showed up, caused the racket, accidentally drew soldiers to the hallway and had to end up emptying it. It was just contradictory to the past events, and now it's a bootstrap paradox, which kind of goes against everything else we've seen in the Red vs. Blue time travel rules. Speaking of bootstrap paradoxes, there's the ending where we find out Genkins is Krovos. That just means everything in 15 through 17 was always meant to happen to create Krovos, which isn't the most unique concept anymore at this point. Which also doesn't make sense considering that Huggins goes back in time and warns the cosmic powers that Genkins is Krovos. Therefore, Genkins is locked up and never has the chance to become Krovos. Which would literally mean Season 15 through 17 never happens, even down to the fact of Loco creating a time machine because Krovos told him to do it. Which I think I mentioned in my Jenkins and Genkins video, that they used a paradox to defeat the guy who's creating paradoxes. And they explained paradoxes are bad for time. So if the time unit is connected to the sword, and the sword time unit rules mirror the rules of the portal guns and the mind jumping ability, then if Tucker's sword is connected to Chorus, then so could this time travel technology. And since this time travel is connected to the Cosmic Powers story, then the Cosmic Powers could be connected to Chorus. They are AI, even Krovos, so instead of being seen as gods most of the story, they could have been known as AI the whole time, just like Santa. Then since they are in monitors, that could be connected to Season 7's monitor. As I said in my video about Temple, the Red and Blue Grunts being in this trilogy could have connected to all this, similar to my first time travel theory video. The Grunts come back to life because of the Time Distortion Unit. The Time Distortion Unit is connected to the sword is connected to Chorus. The Time Distortion Unit could be connected to Chorus, specifically the Temple of Vision. The Temple of Vision is connected to the Future Cubes. The Future Cubes makes Doc go insane, just like the Red and Blue Grunts go insane. Wash gets a vision from the Future Cube, very much like the Temple of Vision, and the Red and Blue Grunts would be maniacs and religious nuts because of visions they could get, similar to how Wash got it in the Future Cube. Then that would be why they worship Krovos. On top of that, if Doc went crazy because of that and the trilogy says that Doc was now a Shizno, aka Krovos minion, then that would be one more thing connecting to Chorus. Though I have to be honest, I'd rather O'Malley not be a villain again. Doc just came back. Imagine O'Malley being a good guy this time. We've had enough of him being a villain. I mentioned that the Everwin could be replaced with the Time Circle, which involved the prophecy repeating itself until it was finished on Chorus. This could make sense because when we first see the Cosmic Powers, Muggins, one of their followers, says something about a prophecy, which turns out to be the damn pizza quest. Then in Season 15, the Grunts mention the prophecy being completed, which, 1, adds weight to my theory that Chorus was the end of the prophecy in Season 13, and 2, gives a reason for the cosmic powers to be connected to the prophecy, especially if the time unit, sword, portal guns, mind jumping, and Chorus were all connected to the cosmic powers. And if the cosmic powers were said to influence aliens back in ancient times, which essentially connects to their religion, which the prophecy was a part of. Kali Rama even has a sword and gives the Reds and Blues swords, so there's some sort of connection there. The one thing that would have made this plot relatable to the Reds and Blues and not anyone else who Krovos could have grabbed is the fact that time travel occurred in Season 3 through 5, but they made it specifically clear that that wasn't the case in this trilogy. Specifically making all this stuff separate in this trilogy, but having it be so similar, makes it feel very redundant. There are a lot of redundancies in this trilogy. Like, we see the labyrinth, and the Reds and Blues go into the labyrinth and see their worst fears, which is just a copy-paste version of Santa in the Temple of Vision. We see in Season 17, Genkins possesses Santa in one of his random paradoxes. Why couldn't we have seen him control Santa there and put the Reds and Blues back in the Temple of Vision, or an extension of the Temple of Vision? This trilogy seems to want to brush old stuff under the rug and create brand new things that are just the same. And that's a little aggravating when you could just tie it all together. As you can see, there are a lot of connections between these two appearances of time travel. And for all I know, that was intentional. But if that's the case, they should just tell us at this point. Though whether that was intentional or not, I didn't like the overall story. What could have been the future of Red vs. Blue past Chorus is what I'll discuss in my next video.